Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, the Raiders embarrassed themselves. They embarrassed Raider Nation by losing to the Indianapolis Colts 25-20 in a game they had no business losing, but they did. We'll talk about the game. We'll talk about the state of the team, plus you'll hear from players in the Raiders locker room. It's all coming up on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, November 14th, 2022.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen each and every day. Remember, you can find the Locked On Raider podcast free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Definitely appreciate everyone who checks out YouTube. Appreciate everyone who subscribed. Met a lot of people at Allegiant Stadium that listen to the show on the daily and said that they check it out on YouTube or just check out the show. And Raider Nation, I appreciate that. I really do. If you're watching this on YouTube, like I said, man, from the bottom of my heart, I really do appreciate it. I understand that this team sitting there at 2-7, it could probably be very easy to say, you know what? I don't want anything to do with the Raiders. I don't want to hear anybody talking about the Raiders. I don't give a damn what Q's saying about the Raiders. And I wouldn't even blame you. And there's people that take time off. There's people that take weeks off. There's some people that probably haven't listened since like week 3, and that's okay. I understand it, but I do appreciate you for listening to the show whenever you get an opportunity to listen and for however long you get an opportunity to listen. And we got a lot to get to on today's show. Today's episode of the Locked On Raiders podcast is actually presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. You pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. And first-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Again, the Raiders lose 25-20, dropping their overall record to 2-7, and it doesn't even matter at this point what the record is, and I've been saying it for a while that it's about one game at a time and just seeing a little bit of success and a W. And I'll tell you, Raider Nation, man, the team, as you very well know by watching the game, just came out of the locker room and just did not look right. You know, I mean, I was walking around the field with Paul Gutierrez and Willie Ramirez before the game, and guys somewhat looked a little pumped up, but not really, right? I mean, you're thinking that you're back in your home stadium, you got a little bit of juice, you know that the team across from you is a wounded duck, and just didn't have that extra juice and that extra gear that I was expecting them to have. And obviously it translated to the game. I mean, if you want to take a look at the numbers real quick, Derek Carr, 24 for 38, 248 yards and 2 TDs. Jacobs, 21 carries, 78 yards, a touchdown, 6 catches for 28 yards. Josh Jacobs was, again, working his tail off, and for the longest, he seemed like he was really going to be the only guy involved in the offensive game plan because nothing else was going right? Just it seemed like nothing else was going right. Mac Hollins wasn't making catches. Devontae Adams, he was getting a few targets, but it still wasn't very much early, at least. And then finally, things started to click with Derek and Devontae Adams. Adams ends the game with 9 catches, 126 yards, and a touchdown. Max Crosby, the one guy on defense that was really busting his tail. And I don't want to say one. There was like 2 or 3 guys that worked really hard. I think Max was working hard. Amik Robertson was working hard. Sam Webb, I like to give Sam Webb some props. I thought Luke Masterson was working really hard since Denzel Perryman was inactive. We'll get to that in a little bit. But Max Crosby, 10 tackles and a sack, just not enough. There was only 1 sack all day. And the Colts offensive line came in shambles. It came in a mess. It was one of the worst offensive lines in the league, and the Raiders were only able to get 1 sack. And that was because of Max Crosby. And, of course, Jonathan Taylor had a big game. He had a big run. It wasn't a backbreaker because the Raiders ended up coming back and taking the lead again. But, man, they had just scored a touchdown, and Jonathan Taylor just runs it right down their throat. It was a bunch of bad tackling or bad angles. There was no tackling, actually. A bunch of bad angles trying to get him to the ground. And just looked like a complete, utter mess. So, Amik Robertson, I mentioned him. He forced a fumble that Jayon Brown recovered. That was cool. And then Sam Webb created a turnover opportunity, but Darian Butler didn't fall on the ball and recover the fumble. And the Colts actually end up scoring on the very next play. That's one of those plays you have to make. That's the difference between teams that win games and teams that lose games. Teams that lose games don't make the play. Sam Webb knocks the ball out. Really good job by Sam, and I thought he did a good job playing in general on Sunday, especially for being such a young guy. And then Darian Butler just doesn't fall on the ball. He tries to pick it up and run, and you just, in that situation, you really just can't do that. So don't have a lot from head coach Josh McDaniels that I want you to hear, but Tashawn Reed did ask him about the team sitting there at 2-7, and if he had any kind of explanation about this team and where it's at right now and why they're playing like this.
No, I mean, there's a lot of things, that go into these games, and being able to, we have opportunities, we earned the opportunity the way we played, through the course of the second half to try to fight back in there, took the lead a couple times, and then, have an opportunity to go down there and win the game, So, look, I mean, that's the National Football League. You either make the plays and you win, and if you don't, you don't, and the same thing with coaching. If there's a call here or there that you make that works, then you can obviously help your team out. And, we're just, obviously there's too many of these it's continuing to happen. So we're going to have to find a better formula here to try to close games.
So there you go. Head coach Josh McDaniels just responded to Tashawn Reed from The Athletic asking about an explanation. Why is the team playing like this? Do you have any explanation? And you hear him like, no. Really you don't. And, I can't tell you, I don't know exactly what happened in the locker room before we had an opportunity to go inside of it. But whatever kind of conversation they had following the game, it clearly was very spirited. It clearly was very emotional. You could tell that there was a little bit of edge in the locker room when we went in there. I could tell that there was a couple of guys that weren't too happy with each other. I know Amir Abdullah seemed like he had got into it with Curtis Bolton. And while we were talking to Jayon Brown, he actually came over and you'll hear Curtis Bolton say, oh, man, I didn't take it some kind of way, man. I'm good or something. So it just, you could tell that there was some edge. And look, there's supposed to be. When you're a 2-7 team, you're supposed to have some edge in the locker room, because, again, you had a very embarrassing loss. Also, Derek Carr was very emotional. You'll actually hear from him coming up in segment number 2. One side note, and I know it's hard to go from the game and then all of a sudden like a positive, but before the game, Richard Seymour, who, of course, spent, a little quick cup of coffee with the Raiders. He did some good things on some really lean Raider teams back in the day, and he was really a leader of the Raiders when he was a member of the Silver and Black. Of course, he went into the Pro Football Hall of Fame this past summer with Cliff Branch, and so the Raiders celebrated him on Sunday. And so before the game, his number was put up on the Hall of Fame wall. And so we had an opportunity to catch up with him. So I got about 3 or 4 minutes with Richard Seymour, and I thought it's some good stuff to hear. So we'll get more into the state of the team. I don't think I need to deep dive into the game anymore. 25-20 loss, again, very embarrassing. But I did want you to hear from the Hall of Famer, Richard Seymour.
Being in the stadium, some lean years with the Raiders when you were there, but for the team to still recognize you and your accomplishments.
Yeah, no, certainly. It's a tremendous honor. This honor is my legacy. When you think about all of the players that have put on the Silver and Black and that rich history and that rich tradition, as a young player growing up, I was always a huge Raider fan. And not only to be a fan, but to also wear the Silver and Black myself and now be a part of that history and tradition, it means a lot. And, the Raiders have always historically been an organization that recognizes their former players, and so to be a part of that history, it means a lot to me and my family.
What have these last few months been like for you? You're obviously rocking the jacket. Have you taken it off yet?
Actually, so not only the jacket, they gave me the ring as well, right? And what's also significant about this ring, so every enshrinee has a number, right? That number that you were enshrined into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And my number is 360, which signifies a full circle. So, it means a lot for me and my family. And also, like I said, for me, to have my kids and wife, here with me. And, in my speech in Canton, I spoke a lot about my family and my teammates. But also, you have to thank the Raider faithful and the Raider Nation and the fans that support this organization. And, they embrace me with open arms, and, I'll always, honor that.
On top of that, what did it mean for you to go in the same class that Cliff Branch was in as well?
Yeah, no, it really means so much. Obviously a Raider great, meant so much. Great friends with Mark Davis. And like I said, just the history of what the Raiders mean to the NFL. The NFL is always better when the Raiders are, winning. So hopefully we get that win today too.
Talking full circle, Richard. You come back here, the team welcomes you back, and you got a couple familiar faces with Josh McDaniels.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on how things have been going for him, and what kind of guy, kind of coach is he? I know he wasn't your specific coach as an OC, but what do you remember from time in New England?
Well, I've always thought he loved football. He was always a bright mind. He cared about the players. He's innovative, and I'm sure he'll find a way. I believe in Josh. Like I said, he's a brilliant mind. So I've been on teams where we started out 0-2 and won the Super Bowl. So you're never. I think as a player, you're never in September, October, early November the team that you want to be in late December going into January. And so I think it's important to continue to get better as the season progresses. And the team still is committed to that vision.
As a captain and a leader in that locker room, when you're going through adversity, what is the message to the team to, hey, stick together and make it happen?
Well, I think at the end of the day, you always want to be around guys that love football. And that's what you need, a bunch of guys in the locker room that enjoys the game, that loves to play the game. And at the end of the day, you figure out a way to win. And, I'm a firm believer in Josh and, the Raider organization, and I'm sure they'll figure it out.
What do you want to see from the defense today?
Be nasty and tough today. I'm sure they're going to represent today, though, so I'm excited.
Got to ask you about your famous punch to Big Ben's. We all love it. We all love it. Raider Nation remembers it.
I don't remember. I don't remember what happened. Did that happen?
Maybe. It was fantastic.
Yeah, no, thank you so much.
I had to ask about it.
It was an open palm strike.
No.
There you go.
Actually, I get flowers about that sometimes. So flowers come to my house about that. So I'll leave it there.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much.
So there you go, the Hall of Famer right there, Richard Seymour. That was prior to the game, and you heard him talking about go out there and play a little nasty. Well, the defense definitely did not play nasty on Sunday. Again, the Raiders lose 25-20. But let's just talk about the team. Where is the team? Are they all bought in? Are all the guys in the locker room all on the same page? I'll tell you why I believe no. We'll talk about that in segment number 2 after I talk to you about a great sponsor of the Locked On Raiders podcast, and that is Total Wine and More. This holiday, find what you love at Total Wine and More. With so many great bottles to choose from, it's easy to find a new favorite single barrel bourbon or the perfect gifts for everyone on your list with some help from a friendly guide. And all with the confidence of knowing you found something special for the lowest price. Find what you love what you find. Only at Total Wine and More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia, North Carolina. Drink responsibly. Be 21. And look, man, who doesn't like to have some nice spirits around the house for the holidays, right? Again, check out Total Wine and More. They got you covered. Again, go to the website and check them out, TotalWine.com. Again, TotalWine.com. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Talked about the game briefly in segment number 1. It was embarrassing, but the team is looking embarrassing right now, and it feels like, and really by the actions and the sounds and from what I've seen in the locker room and what we heard from Derek Carr post-game, really lets you know that everyone is not on the same page. Devontae Adams, you'll hear from him coming up in segment number 3. He let it be known. Derek Carr really let it be known. So I want you to hear this sound from Derek Carr first. It's only a couple minutes. It's a couple questions. One, Tashawn Reed is asking again for an explanation of, why is the team where it's at right now, sitting at 2-7? And then you'll hear a follow-up question from Willie Ramirez. And I left all the pauses in there because that's the emotion, right? That's where you get the emotion from Derek Carr. Never have I, in the time that I've been covering the team, whether up close and personal or from a distance, have I heard Derek Carr so emotional following a game, to the point where, and I wasn't in there when it happened, but when the reporters came out, we were in the locker room. When the reporters came out of the Derek Carr media session, they were saying he was crying, and I thought they were saying it like not joking, but saying it like, oh, he's complaining about this or he's complaining about that. No, he literally was crying. So here's the sound from Derek Carr. First, he's responding to Sean Reed's question about if there's any explanation for why this team is performing or underperforming the way that they are?
I can't speak for everybody. I know where I stand, and I love the silver and black. I'm going to give it everything I can every time I go out there. And I can't speak for everybody, for every man, what's going on in their head. But I can tell you what's going on in my head, and I'm going to give it all that I can every single time.
Derek, I'm going to ask this with the utmost respect. Last year, with what you did with this team, with everything you guys went through, and you endured and got to the playoffs. This year, it just seems there's frustration at times, obviously, after these losses. Is there, in any way, a disconnect with what you're trying to do and this new staff as far as the system?
I don't think so. I love Josh. I love I love our coaches. They've had nothing but success, way more success than I've ever had, and, I'm sorry.
Derek,
sorry.
Continue.
To finish that, sorry for being emotional. I'm just pissed off about some of the things, that a lot of us try and do just to practice what we put our bodies through just to sleep at night. And for that to be the result of all that effort pisses me off. Pisses a lot of guys off. It's hard knowing what some guys are doing. Like I said, just to practice what they're putting in their body just to sleep at night. Like just so we can be there for each other. And I wish everybody in that room felt the same way about this place. And as a leader, that pisses me off, if I'm being honest.
So there you go. A very emotional Derek Carr. And I don't know whose fault it is why all the guys aren't all on the same page in the locker room, because this new regime has brought in a lot of their own guys, right? They brought in a lot of their guys so they could avoid not having having this issue that they're having as far as not buying in and not all being on the same page. I mean, I don't know who it is that Derek Carr is talking about that is not trying to get it done and does not care about winning as much as he does and Devontae does and others do. But I tell you, it feels like, from the sound of what he was saying and from the sound of Devontae Adams, it sounds like that there's a bunch of guys that, they all say the right things, during practice or the practice week. But then when push comes to shove, when it comes to the game, they're not ready to play. Right. I mean, it just feels that way. And I don't know. I don't want to just call out guys and say, it's this guy, it's that guy, or the other guy. But it kind of told me a lot when Denzel Perryman and Cleve Farrell were both inactive on Sunday. And I know Denzel was questionable going into the weekend, but to me, Denzel Perryman doesn't miss games, right? And before we even got into the locker room, I saw him come out of the locker room and he just kind of gave me a what's up, and that was it. Here's Josh McDaniels. Check this out. It's only about 15 seconds, but here's Josh McDaniels talking about some of the surprise inactives. Again, Cleve Farrell and Denzel Perryman, also Jackson Barton, Neil Farrell Jr., Matthew Butler. Those are the rookies. Those are guys that are actually getting some playing time right about now. And they were all out and inactive on Sunday. So here he is. It's very brief, but here's Josh McDaniels talking about the inactives.
There's some things there that are internal, and we always try to do what's best for the team. But, I know we had some guys that were inactive this week, and hopefully that would change next week.
So there it was right there. Short and simple. Let it be known that obviously there were some issues. There were some internal issues. There was either some guys that weren't buying in, or there were some guys that weren't working in practice, or there was some kind of, I don't want to say blow up, but there was obviously some misunderstanding. And you heard him right there. Hopefully we'll get him back next week. But this has got to be answered. This has got to be, I don't want to say, I mean, I guess the answer is not the right wording, right? This has got to be solved. It's got to be figured out as far as, okay, what are you going to do moving forward? something's got to change. This you cannot keep doing, right? Obviously, I had so many people hitting me up telling me that everyone needs to get fired. Head coach Josh McDaniels needs to get fired. Patrick Graham needs to get fired. Offensive line coach needs to get. Look, somebody is most likely going to be the fall guy. Again, I don't know who it is. I don't think it's going to be head coach Josh McDaniels, but we'll see. Right, we'll see what happens. When Mark Davis makes his decisions when he's looking at this team, because he cannot be happy. There's no way he could be happy. You heard from Richard Seymour in segment number 1. Cassie Soto, and this is before I started recording, asked Mark Davis, because he was there at that Richard Seymour, and said, "Hey, how are you doing today?" And he said, "Ask me that question again in about 3 or 4 hours." And she said something to me as soon as the game was over. She's like, "Well, I guess I don't have to ask him how he's feeling, because I'm sure it's not good." But I mean, really, outside of Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams is clearly angry. You hear the emotion from Derek Carr. Look, and I know a lot of people aren't Derek Carr guys, and I know a lot of people want to move on from Derek Carr. But, man, that dude sitting there crying and having that emotion, at least he's letting me know that he cares. He gives a damn, right? And I don't take him crying and him being emotional like that for weakness. It is not. It is a sign of him caring so much that it's bringing him to tears, right? And when he talks about, if these guys, what we do to our bodies just to be able to go out there and practice, what we put our bodies through, the way we have to sleep at night. I mean, he has all these emotions going on inside of him. So I look, regardless where you stand on Carr, I can respect, at least I know he cares. One thing I noticed when I got into the locker room, where's Chandler Jones? I know we say that on the field. Where's Chandler Jones? That dude bounces out of the locker room fast, and he goes out the back door. He's gone. He doesn't give us an opportunity to even get close to talking to him. Like, where the hell is Chandler Jones? And I know I can't go into the locker room Monday through Friday because of the time that my radio show is, and a lot of times the way practice is set up, I'm not able to do that. But I couldn't tell you the last time we talked to Chandler Jones in the locker room. I couldn't tell you. I know I haven't talked to him in the locker room all year. Devontae Adams is available just about every game, right? Guys make themselves available just about every game. Josh Jacobs makes himself available pretty much every game. Max Crosby pretty much every game. Chandler Jones, when was the last time he was made available? And honestly, he's one of the guys they brought in to keep that locker room together. And I feel like he's one of the guys that ain't showing up to the party. I know Jerron Harmon was brought in. Jakob Johnson was brought in. I mean, there's guys that were brought in that are Brandon Bolden. Those are guys that are New England guys, guys that were familiar with Josh McDaniels just for this simple thing that they can keep that locker room together with the older guys that were there with, Rich Bisaccia and the Gruden and Mayock regime. So this locker room is clearly fractured. This locker room is probably going to get worse before it gets better. And I'll tell you right now, unless something changes quick, fast, in a hurry, the Raiders might not win another game. And not because they can't, not because they're not talented, but because of that locker room, because that locker room is a mess, and at some point, that locker room being a mess, if it continues to get worse and worse and worse, Mark Davis's hand might get forced. It really might. And I don't want to throw some stuff out there and speculate and, and be reckless about it, but something's got to change, man, because that is embarrassing. That's all I got for you for segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Coming up in segment number 3, I got plenty of guys to choose from that you'll hear from in the Raiders locker room. Amik Robertson, Devontae Adams, Sam Webb, Deron Harmon, Jayon Brown. Got all of those. Obviously not going to be able to play all, but I'll get a couple of them coming up in segment number 3 after I tell you about Prize Picks. And Prize Picks is today's title sponsor of the show. And it's daily fantasy made easy. You pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less in their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. And the real cool thing about Prize Picks is you're not playing against anyone. You're not. It's just going up against you versus the projections available, and that's it. They offer projections on any sport that you watch: NFL, NBA, NHL, PGA, college football. Of course, the playoffs are right around the corner. That's going to be exciting. Men's college basketball is back. That's fun. Love that. All kind of different sports they have. They got you covered. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada. Right now, download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. You deposit $100, PrizePicks is going to give you $100. You deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget, use the promo code Locked On and sign up for instant deposit match up to $100. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to bring you some sounds from the Raiders locker room. I know normally I have calls and texts straight up that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. Tons of calls and texts to get to. I get it. I apologize for not putting them on today's show, but I like you to hear the raw emotion. I want you to be able to hear the players in the locker room immediately following the game. I think this is something that has been great to have this season, something that we haven't had before just because of COVID and the locker rooms were closed and everybody was at the podium. So getting an opportunity to get into the locker room, plus you pick up on a lot of things in the locker room. One guy that I've had a really good time being able to talk with so far this year has been Amik Robertson. And this is all these conversations are all like group settings and, like Cassie Soto is in a lot of this and Adam Hill from the RJ, myself. We got there's all kind of people involved in these group sessions while we're in the Raiders locker room. But some good stuff. So Amik Robertson is the first one that I want you to hear from. And he's talking about, just the defensive side of things and especially that play that Campbell got the touchdown on, something that, really shouldn't have happened. It was one of those. It was a blown coverage. But here's Amik Robertson in the Raiders locker room following the game.
On that touchdown to Paris Campbell, was there a miscommunication back there, or what kind of happened on that play?
I don't really know how to respond to that. It was definitely miscommunication. We just got to get better at finishing. That's all I can say.
What are you feeling right now, honey?
When you love the game of football, you always want to win. So losing always sucks, of course, but 24-hour rule. You just gotta suck it up, deal with the consequences, fix the little things, and move on. The most important game is the win next week. So all we can do is try to fix those little things and continue trying to figure out the recipe of finishing.
You feel like it's been communication this year when trying to pick up this defensive scheme?
Nah. We just gotta play better as a whole. That's all I can say.
It felt like there was not a whole lot of energy maybe early in the game. You made that play to force the fumble out. Like how much do you think the mood kind of changed right then? I know it didn't end up well, but you think the mood kind of changed, the energy kind of changed after that?
I always, of course. I always try to be that. We a lot of guys that bring energy, each and every day, and I try to be one of those guys. I always try to be that playmaker to, get us going. I don't try to make the average plays. I try to make the plays that, try to change the game. And unfortunately, we didn't win, but I think in that moment, that was a play that kind of, changed the game a little bit.
On the Campbell touchdown, the play before it, you guys caused the fumble. It looked like, Darren was going to get the recovery. How deflating, I guess, was it to not get that turnover?
Of course, we wanted it, but unfortunately, we didn't. We had to focus on the next play. It's a great play by young guy, Sam Webb. Unfortunately, we didn't get the ball. We just had to focus on trying to, get it back and focus on the next play.
Do you think maybe the focus was gone on the next play? Is that what kind of happened?
Nah, we just got to play better.
I wonder why you guys felt like you guys came out kind of slow and not a lot of energy.
I don't really think we came out slow. We just had to fix the little thing. I feel like guys' energy was there. The game just wasn't going how we wanted it to go. And unfortunately, some guys went out there and made plays that gave to give us a spark.
You guys obviously have not had the season you wanted to, but did today feel different?
Yeah. Every game feels different because you always think this is going to be the game that get us going. So unfortunately, we lost. It was a hurtful feeling, but 24-hour rule, we got to move on.
What was the mood in the locker room?
Before or after?
After.
Of course, it's always frustrating. A lot of guys frustrated. A lot of guys in this room love the game of football. So like I said before, when you're losing, it's not a good feeling. But like I said, we got to move on.
Has football been fun for you guys this season?
Coming to work every day with guys that want to win. Of course, it's been fun. Of course, we haven't. It's not going as we planned. But like I said, we got to keep moving forward.
There's Amik right there. He's always a good dude. He's always one of those guys that's willing to talk, even though he doesn't want to. And I will say a couple of those answers, including one that I asked him, he says that's all I can say about that. That's all I can say about that. That almost kind of goes back to the, what the head coach has said. Hey, don't, say certain things to the media. Don't talk about this. Don't talk about that. And normally he doesn't answer like that. And maybe it was just emotions. Maybe he was just frustrated. And so that's all he really had. But normally he gives us some really good answers. But on a couple of those, you heard him say, yeah, that's all I could say on that. So that's something that I found to be a little bit interesting. Now, Davante Adams is a guy everyone always wants to hear from. And he's very open and honest when it comes to, what's going on the field, in the locker room. And you'll hear him call out some guys, not by name, but just let it be known that everyone's not doing what they're supposed to do on the field. And they say all the right things, but they're not doing all the right things. Here's Davante Adams post-game in the Raiders locker room.
What are you feeling right now, Davante?
Same thing as last week, same thing as all the other weeks. Pretty much.
What was said, after this one, just in terms of kind of moving forward, making sure everybody kind of stays locked in here?
I mean, ain't no magic message. Just, we're gonna keep what was said in house. Wasn't nothing crazy, but just, we had a conversation we have as a team, and that's kind of that. I don't know.
Take us through that last play there, the fade ball in the end zone.
Ran the route, he kind of inched back, and the ball went up. Made a good play on the ball.
What happened in the first quarter that led to so much struggles, but then it seemed like the offense was able to kind of find its feet later on in the game?
We played behind the sticks as usual. That's how we played, and that's when we don't have success on offense. So holding penalties, a bunch of bullshit that just, doesn't allow you to move the ball and have realistic shots at converting. And that's where we lived a lot of this year, and that's what happened.
What's it going to take to kind of turn this around going forward mindset-wise, just message-wise?
Just got to stay the course, man. It's easier said than done, but you just got to stay the course. You got to have everybody on the same wavelength. Everybody's got to go out there and put everything into it, throughout the week. And then Sunday's supposed to be fun, and that's the least fun day of the week right now. So that's a problem. We got to fix that.
What's the message from Josh McDaniels been these last couple of weeks?
It's been the same thing, just you guys got to play for one another, play a full game, and, that's 60 minutes from start to finish, coming out starting fast and then closing out games. Making plays when taking on that burden, wanting to be the guy that, or wanting to be on offense when it's time, or wanting the ball, or wanting to shut it down when you're on defense, just wanting to be the guy that make the play. And, I just don't got enough guys that are fully bought into that right now. And I think people like the idea, but when it's time to actually execute, it don't turn out that way.
Is that the problem, that guys aren't bought in?
I don't think it's a buy-in. I don't think people are like, F what he's talking about, or, I'm going against the grain. It's just about a matter of executing when it's time. Whether that's early, and 60-minute game it doesn't mean just finishing, that's part of it, but it means a complete game. Every minute of the game, giving it all you got, and it's not about being perfect, because that's not football. Football is the most imperfect, most team sport that there is. So at the end of the day, it's doing your job and making the plays when you called on and when you get the opportunities. And we just don't do that at a high enough level right now.
So it wasn't 8 or 9 minutes like it was last time that he talked in the Raiders locker room. I believe that was following the Jaguars game, but it was still, almost 3 minutes. And I think he said all he needed to say in those 3 minutes, right? And you can hear the frustration in his voice. Again, very emotional, not to the point of tears, but you can hear the frustration being built up in Davante Adams. So I want you also to hear, I think this will be the last one that we do for today's show. I'll have some more coming up tomorrow. I'll have Jerron Harmon and Jayon Brown tomorrow. No, you know what? Let's do Jayon Brown. Let me do Jayon Brown. It's only about a minute long, but you'll hear Curtis Bolton and you'll hear Amir Abdullah in the background talking about, I didn't take it some kind of way. You'll hear it. You'll hear it. It's only a minute long, but here's Jayon Brown, and he's responding to the Jonathan Taylor run. The first question being asked to him is about that big Jonathan Taylor run where he took it to the house, and there was just a lot of bad angles, bad communication on that one from the Raiders defense. So here's Jayon Brown in the Raiders locker room postgame.
He made a great cut and got upfield and made a play.
Was it miscommunication defensively in terms of it looked like two guys were in the same gap, or?
We just got to fit it up better.
Okay.
I saw the hole.
I ain't taking no type of look. I ain't taking no.
We're straight.
Overall for you guys, taking that one and the touchdown to Campbell out of the way, what was working for the Colts offensively today?
They just made more plays than us, and that long run with But JT and Matt Ryan had one as well. We just got to find ways to get turnovers and get off the field. Hold on, Kurt. Hold on, bro.
What's the emotion right now? What are you feeling?
We got to work. That's all it is. We got to work. We got to work. We got to get better. And we got to attack the board, get after it at practice, and find answers.
There you go, Jayon Brown. And I don't know if you were able to hear it. Like I heard it, it's like clear as day. But Curtis Bolton, the linebacker, was not very happy. And you can even hear Jayon Brown say, like, hey, chill out. And so it's just, yeah, there was some tension, no doubt. And when you're 2-7, there should be, right? I'm actually surprised it took this long to have tension in the locker room, right? I mean, I kind of wish that someone that got emotional and angry, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Right. Even after that Kansas City loss, and I know they only lost by 1 point, and it was, felt like a positive for most people, but these guys are pros and there's no moral victories for these guys. They want to win. So if there wasn't buy-in, then I would have loved for someone to step up and say something and be like, hey man, you guys all need to step your game up. And whoever's not, sticking to the plan, be called out for it. Now, and of course, I was not in Kansas City, so I don't know what happened in the Raiders locker room following the game. We know that was the Devontae Adams, dust up with the cameraman, but that's really all we know. So the final one, no, do I have time? No, I don't think I have time. I'll play Sam Webb and Deron Harmon. We'll do that on tomorrow's show. We'll have more news and notes, of course. Head coach Josh McDaniels is going to talk to the media about 10:30 this morning. So we'll see what he has to say after going over the film. See if there's anything that happens, right? I'm fully expecting some kind of something to happen. Like, I just feel like you can't lose that game to the Colts and nothing happen and everything stays status quo. I don't see that. I could be wrong. This is just my gut feeling. Nobody has told me anything. I haven't heard anything. I just feel like after a loss like that, like I said many times last week, they had no business losing. Well, they lost. So something, in my opinion, has got to change, but we'll see if anything does or not. So we'll get back to calls and texts as well tomorrow, straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. Again, Raider Nation, thanks so much for making the show your first listen each and every day. Remember, you can find the Locked On Raider podcast free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Ari, shout out to my man Ari at Ari Produces. Give him a follow. Tell him he's doing a good job, or tell him he's doing a bad job. No, don't tell him he's doing a bad job. He's not. He's dealing with me and my crazy schedule, so he's doing fantastic as far as I'm concerned. But thank you so much, Raider Nation. I know you're probably angry and pissed off and frustrated by the 2-7 record, just like everyone else is, including myself. But to continue rocking with me like you rock with me, I definitely do appreciate that. So we'll be back here tomorrow doing it just like we do. News and notes, conversation, calls and texts. It's all going down tomorrow here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Until then, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.